Welcome back, everybody, to the Planet Film Network. I am one of your hosts, Sean Monk.
And I'm your other host, TJ Cornwell. And today we're going to do a little bit of supplemental content. We didn't realize last week that today is the 4th of July. So in lieu of a live show, we're going to be doing our spoiler review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, as well as some grades for the other movies as well. And we'll see how they stack up at the end. So Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. We saw it on Thursday, Sean. Who wants to go first with their initial thoughts?
I think for once, well, not for once, this happened many times, but I feel like I can't remember the last time I feel like, have been more opposed in our
Yeah.
thoughts on a movie.
Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, probably. I I guess I'll go first, and I'll say you could go right now. We posted them at this point, last Thursday when the movie came out, over on TikTok, and then my review straight out of the theater is up as well, so you can get my immediate thoughts from back when I first saw it. But just quickly, I think I really enjoyed this movie more so than I thought I was going to. I really tried to just leave everything at the door. And I think for the most part, I was able to do that for myself. I think there's definitely some things. I'm not saying that it's the best Indiana Jones movie, as we'll talk about in a little bit here. But I do think that it was way better than I was expecting these last few weeks, just with all the conversation and everything. But there is stuff that I think, I think it's a little overly long overall. I think there's some entire sequences that could have probably either been chopped or absolutely trimmed down, but maybe just chopped entirely. But overall, I was surprised with how moved I was between James Mangold's directing, Harrison Ford's acting, the chemistry that Harrison Ford had with Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena. I thought really worked for me. Possibly, I think in our big rankings, I said top three companions for me was Henry Jones Sr., Short Round, and then Sala. I think I got to give the edge to Helena over Sala now. So I think she's very, very good in this movie. You know what? I totally blanked. Marion was also in there. So Helena firmly, I think, top 4 of the companions for any of these movies. So yeah, just quickly, really, really liked it, but there are definitely some issues that I think are totally fair for people to be feeling, and stuff that I feel as well, and I'm excited to get into it all here. What did you think of Indiana Jones 5?
Yeah, I came out and I think I don't know what expectations I went in with, but coming out of it, I was just really left underwhelmed, I guess. And that has nothing to do with any of the performances. I thought Harrison Ford is doing the best he could, especially at his age. I really enjoyed Phoebe Waller-Bridge as well. I liked her acting, as well as just kind of her, kind of the new, I guess, kind of flavor that she brought to a new, like you said, sidekick that we haven't really seen before, which I thought was really interesting. I felt as though the story didn't really do it for me. The villains, unfortunately, didn't really do it for me, even though I thought for sure that, we're going back to the bread and butter that I said in my review, the Nazis, which are the probably the best villains in this franchise. And again, nothing against Mads Mikkelsen. It's just I just did not feel the same sort of threat that I felt either in Crusade or Raiders, for example. I know those are the two best ones, obviously. Or maybe even in Temple of Doom, I guess. But granted, I think that is just because I didn't really buy into the whole what we're going after. I didn't buy into the dial.
Okay.
And I know it's like, well, did you see what we did in the previous one? I said we talked aliens, and I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't know. That just is more. I think it was more. I enjoy the adventure leading up to that more than I did this. and you know, like you said, it's a little long in some places. And I know I told you, I said the person in front of us had, you know, their phone. It said 7:04. Our show time was at 6. It's 7:04, and I said, oh, you know, another hour. And we
Yeah.
walk out of the theater 8:45. And I was like, what the hell happened? We
Yeah.
were in here that long. You know, a little long in some places. Maybe some characters that don't really need to be, or maybe even a certain actor that just didn't. I don't really know why they were in the movie.
Yeah.
Really
Okay.
unnecessary for me. But again, it did hit me with like sort of the nostalgia type stuff. The ending,
Yeah.
while maybe not fully earned, it's nice to see. It's nice to see the return of Salah, like you said, who doesn't really overstay his welcome at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just at the end of the day, I felt a little underwhelmed. Again, not really sure what I was looking for. Again, considering, and I really could tell, and I'm sure you could tell, a lot of people would tell. Harrison Ford definitely is. He's definitely old, you know.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do maybe everything you want to do. Even like Crystal Skull, you know, he was still doing a decent amount of stuff.
He was
Like I
climbing
said,
those
you know,
boxes like nobody's business.
he was climbing those boxes. He was getting his ass beat. That was something that was really missing for me from this movie, was the classic get your ass beat scene that we did not get, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's a few of it. There's some of it in there. There's some, like, you know, big
A lot of
punch
punching.
turning.
Yeah.
Right, but nothing like
A lot of
you know,
big
we're
punch.
fighting for 5 minutes, 6 minutes straight.
Yeah,
you know,
no.
beating the shit out of each
Nothing that rivals the like plane, the like Pat Roach plane
other. Oh
scene.
yeah, nothing.
You know what I
close to
mean?
that. Yeah, no. But yeah, overall underwhelmed overall. But really excited to, you know, talk. You know, I could see myself being talked into a higher rating than what I did. But as of right now, I sit at 2 out of 5 stars.
I will go for that as well, and then I would say, well, first of all, I'll say right now I'm sitting at. I originally said a 3.5 out of 5 because I always feel this unwarranted pressure from people I talk to at work about Letterboxd and everything, that I am maybe too generous with my ratings.
Yeah.
So I always sometimes I will overcorrect a little bit, and I gave it 3.5 on Letterboxd, but in the days that have passed here, I think it's unfair of me to not give it at least a 4. With how much that it's sitting with me and sitting with me well, more so than I even thought. This is post my immediate thoughts. I think it's only continued to sit with me even better, which I really wasn't expecting. So I would say 4 out of 5 for me on this one. If you don't mind spoilers, if you're not going to see this movie regardless, or if you're going to see this movie regardless, so you don't really care about spoilers, keep on watching here for the rest of this video. If not, I would say tab out of here, keep it in your continue watching on YouTube. Join us back once you've seen Indiana Jones 5, The Dial of Destiny, and we are going to launch into our full spoiler thoughts here, kind of jumping all over the place within the movie, so you have been warned. We are now entering spoiler territory. First off here, guys, I think we're going to jump right into talking about some of the characters, some of the performances, some of the things that we liked about them, maybe some of the things that we didn't like or didn't connect with us. And so let's actually start here with the Wombat herself, Helena Shaw, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, kind of jumping a decent amount into the movie once we're finally introduced to her. For me, I loved Phoebe Waller-Bridge in this movie. I thought that she was easily, not the best part, but I would say the best new addition to this franchise, which, of course, every single Indiana Jones movie is mostly new characters with just Indy and then sometimes Sala or Marion. But I think she easily slipped into this universe, felt real, felt authentic. I liked, first of all, when she's first introduced, because I don't even know why I'm being coy about this stuff because we're in spoilers, but when she's first introduced, she kind of sneaks into his classroom. You have that great kind of back and forth where he doesn't really recognize her at first because you find out a little bit later. It's been about 15, 16, 17 years since he's seen her, So she was just really, in middle school last time they spoke to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the bar when they're kind of having their fun back and forth, and then she goes, you don't recognize me, and then you kind of see that spark light up in Harrison's eyes that I thought was really really good, and I just really loved their dynamic and their chemistry throughout the entire movie, of how the kind of dynamic between them kept shifting. And another character we'll talk about, Ethan Isidore, who plays Teddy. I liked that scene where he was very much, because Helena in her own right is kind of like her own version of Indy with her own sidekick in Teddy.
Right.
And so I like that Teddy, it says at one point, he's like, hey, I thought that we were, in charge of this stuff. I don't want to be taking orders from, this guy that I don't even know in Indy. And I like that she is telling Teddy, no, I'm still in charge. But really, I think over the course of this movie, it's really Helena learning a big lesson in, having worldly perspective. How many times does she cheer and then Indy has to remind her, like, you're cheering, but I just watched my friend get murdered. You know what I mean? Like you have to understand the severity of stuff that's happening. And sometimes he in that scene in particular really hits the emotional punch to her. But then also sometimes it is more sometimes played for laughs in the whole the bit that you see from the trailer where he's like, I've been tortured with voodoo, shot 9 times, like so. But I liked that kind of recurrent theme with the two of them of she is basically Indy with no perspective. And I think her kind of journey of gaining perspective, and then at the end realizing how much that she appreciates Indy, and wanting him to be a part of her life, which then when we talk about the ending, obviously Indy also has to recognize how much he wants her to be a part of his life, which he kind of loses focus of. So overall, I really liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge in this, and I really liked her character. But what were your kind of thoughts on Helena Shaw in this?
Yeah,
movie?
I go back and forth on the character. Like I said earlier, I really liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge in the movie. I think she was having a lot of fun on screen, and I could definitely see that. And I thought her and Harrison Ford had some pretty good chemistry. I think where I've kind of fell off with the character was I felt like there was something a little deeper that we just didn't get. They have like a few conversations here and there, one-on-one talking about her father, and what that kind of meant to her to see him kind of tortured by this this dial and the whole idea of Archimedes and what he was trying to do and all that stuff. But also we learned that that she is kind of not a criminal, maybe a criminal.
I would say she's a criminal.
Owes money to these gangsters and was bailed out by by them in a prison in South America. But we don't really get and maybe it's just I'm supposed to accept that that's who she is. But I want to know more why she is that way.
Yeah.
That we see like one flashback where Indy goes to England to meet with her father, and she's there. And I thought when we saw that, it's still pretty early in the movie, and I thought, maybe we'll get a few of these kind of intercut throughout the movie, try to get more of her past and why she is the way she is now. And we just never got that. And I was like, well, why am I I care about her, but I also want to care about her more. So give me a reason to, and tell me what she's been through, etc. Yeah. And I felt very let down by that.
Maybe that's fair.
I don't know, maybe that's me. I was to say maybe that's me expecting too much. I don't know. But
I would have liked another one of those flashbacks, maybe another one where it's just. Actually, yeah. The more I'm saying about it, maybe another one where it's now been maybe 5 years since Indy kind of cut off her dad, and maybe you see an even older Helena really see the demise and the kind of unraveling of her father. That Indy talks about throughout the movie. Basically, I think maybe one more scene along her kind of timeline I think would have helped.
Right.
But then again, also one of my biggest problems is too many scenes.
But then, the movie is 2.5 hours. Maybe cut something down, or I don't know. But overall, like I said, I really like Phoebe Waller-Bridge's performance. I did like her kind of. I liked that she got and both of these characters they both kind of got that Raiders moment of, for example, when Indy is explaining the arc to the FBI guys. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, you take the staff, the rod, the staff's probably like, a few feet tall. You put the thing on the top, and then it shines on where the Temple of Soul, or whatever that is. And she has that scene on the boat, kind of. She might have another one that I'm not recalling, but she has that one on the boat with Mads Mikkelsen, and she's going through and she's translating the tablet thing, and saying all this stuff, and I was like, yes, I love that, and that is something I really did love about this movie, is that they kind of gave her, I felt like they gave her enough to do in those kind of scenarios. As well as maybe, if they ever wanted to, I know they said that it's basically ending with Harrison Ford, but if they ever wanted to do like a Phoebe Waller-Bridge and, I don't know, some other character, like kind of spin-off
round
thing, I would,
spin-off,
yeah, short round,
team up.
Yep. Yeah, I would watch that most definitely.
I would definitely watch something with the two of them in it for sure. I would I think coming out of this, another reason I just ended up liking her character so much is like the fact that I would be like, I'd equally watch a short round spinoff anything as much as I would watch a Hell in a Shaw one. Like, because I just think they made her character so compelling. Now, kind of, I know we said we're going to jump all over, and we kind of truly are, because you just sparked my idea, and we can talk a little bit about the boat sequence and Antonio Banderas' role in this movie as well at this point. But that scene where she's reading the tablet and translating it, and Indy thinks that he's been betrayed potentially by her, and then kind of throughout that scene, you realize, oh no, she's just kind of stalling for time. While I liked that scene in a vacuum, and I think it's probably one of the scenes, like you said, that endears us to her the most, because it really shows like, hey, and I know I leaned over to you, I don't know if we've said we saw this movie together on opening night. I leaned over to you at one point and I said, completely forgot what I said. But basically, that scene where she's explaining it to them, I liked it, but at the same time, it just felt like there was too much going on. Like, to me, I like that scene in a vacuum, but it's a big lore dump and exposition scene that actually, in effect, ends up going really nowhere. So to me, as much as I love that scene, to me, whenever I'm thinking to myself, what can I cut? I almost think you cut that entire sequence. Like, I'm talking the entire thing. Like, you never even go to the boats. You're just like, oh, the part that was in the boat, the little tablet. Because if you take the tablet, and I'm talking about the red part, so the actual red tablet, prior to the melting. If you take the red tablet and just say that was already found and that's already in a museum, then you still have the element of, oh, we're going to get this. You can even still have Mikkelsen hot on their tail. Like, maybe you could throw in another location. Maybe you have to, because another plot that I really want to talk about is this whole framed for murder thing. Maybe that's a way to make that plot point a little more relevant, is maybe you say, oh God, we got to get this tablet, but it's at the Met. Like, we got to go back to New York as I'm wanted for murder. And then maybe the intrigue is just you have a little sequence where Indy's trying to avoid the police. You know what I mean? Because he has to go back to New York or something like that. Just thinking off the top of my head, because really, you spend about 5 minutes on the boat. And obviously also on Antonio Banderas' boat, that's where we get one of the most excellent scenes and dialogue exchanges in this movie about what would you do if you could go back in time, and Indy really lays the hammer down of, I would tell my son not to enlist. Yeah, absolutely. But you can find another setting for that conversation to take place. And so then really it's you have 5 minutes on the boat with Antonio Banderas, 10-minute diving sequence, then another 8 to 9 minutes of the fake out, is Helena gonna work with Mads Mikkelsen now,
Hmm.
and then their kind of escape, and they're like, oh, there we go. Now they're going to be heading over to Alexandria while we're heading to Sicily.
Hmm.
But then at the end of it, he just looks down the binoculars and just goes,
We're
oh, they're
heading
heading
west.
east, or they're
Or
heading
east.
west, not
Yeah.
east. So it's like that entire segment really kind of does nothing to the movie. And that's
Right.
like, we're talking about 25 minutes of
Hmm.
screen time. If you cut that entire portion, that's like 25 minutes that I think you really could have used, gone from this movie. But that being said, there's a lot of great stuff within there that I really liked. But that's kind of the main negative that I keep coming back to, is how much kind of extra stuff just
Hmm.
to have some more moments. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like they really wanted to pack this movie full of set pieces and moments that would stick with you. And I think in a vacuum, like I said, a lot of this stuff does work and works very, very well.
Right.
But then when you look at it kind of in the broader picture of the plot and the story of the movie, I think a lot of it kind of could have been cleaned up. But what were your thoughts kind of on the overall boat stuff, and Antonio Banderas, whatever you want to talk about with that?
Yeah, well, I went to the I went to the bathroom when they were doing that dive scene, so I
Yeah.
didn't miss that. I saw, when the eels come out and all that stuff. So I don't really know what happened from that point on to when Mads Mikkelsen gets on the boat.
Yeah,
And you told
basically.
me it was like they just like show. It's like they see the boat coming and then they're there.
Yeah, because when you left, he had already grabbed the box from the ship.
Right.
They
Yeah.
were just trying to get back up, and all that
Okay.
happens is Indy's line gets caught for like 4 seconds,
Of course.
and then they like tug on it, and then he's like,
Yeah.
"All right, let's go," and then they go
Yeah.
up to the surface, and the Nazis are on the boat. So
Hmm.
that's literally all that you missed.
Yeah, like you said, I really liked the conversation that Helena and Indy have about going back, Indy talking to his son and how the relationship with him and Marion kind of broke down
Yeah,
due to his son dying, which we'll talk about in a second, just for real quick. Talking about real quick, Ronaldo, Antonio Banderas' character.
oh yeah,
Not really sure why he's kind of in this movie. I think when you cast somebody as Antonio Banderas, I assume he would be in it more than he is. Um,
yeah,
and he's just not. Does he kind of fit well? Yes, he's cracking jokes, and clearly him and Indy have a history. But I just and he's just kind of brutally murdered as a like. It's almost like a they try to pull the Last Crusade kind of, I'm gonna make you do this thing by shooting the person that you really like. But
yeah,
this one doesn't have, at the point in Last Crusade, we've built this relationship with Sean Connery and Harrison Ford
yeah,
of like, oh, they are obviously, they're father and son and they do love each other, but they're also kind of at an impasse.
yeah,
Um, and in this, it's like, well, here's this character that, hey, Indy's known him for a while, but by the way, we're just gonna just kill him. Like, there's no like emotional attachment that I had to his character whatsoever.
yeah.
So that does really suck. But like I said, the kind of Helena explaining everything, that was cool. The dynamite, kind of her holding it in her pocket and all that was, that was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. Maybe, just what it leads up to, where, he's looking down in the binocular and says, "Oh, they're going west." All right, well, I guess
Yeah,
we didn't need to, dupe him or anything.
yeah,
Um,
and that's
just
like a
real,
10-minute
yeah,
dupe.
right, yeah.
That's like, yeah,
Just going back to Mutt, Indy's son, killed him off screen.
yep.
Which we actually did see. We knew that earlier because I think one of the CIA agents mentioned that.
It
Like,
was
oh, we
on
lost
the
his son or
news
whatever.
report when it
Oh
said
yes,
that local
right,
professor, Henry Jones was, after he
right,
lost his, how the news knew that or
mhm,
whatever, but they were like,
yeah,
this is after, he's lost his son recently, and which led to his divorce. It's like, okay.
right. What did you just real quick? Like, what do you think about? Do you think? Well, one, I guess. Do you think if Shia LaBeouf was still in good standing, that they would have brought him back? And
Okay.
what's your opinion on them kind of saying that he that he died. I personally, I don't think they needed to do that. I think they could have just said, "Oh, he's, somewhere. He doesn't need to be dead."
Mm-hmm.
You can still have a stake wedged in between Marion and Indy in a different way. It doesn't have to be that their son died.
I'm gonna answer your question by throwing you a different question to think on.
Yeah.
And that is one criticism I have seen of this is what's the other Harrison Ford movie where you're reintroduced to the character after the loss of their son and leading to him being separated with the person with the love of his life. Obviously, Marion in this and Leia in The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
Difference is that Mutt is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Ben is lost, and Han is running from that. He's running from a reconciliation with his son. Han chose to, obviously Ben was turned, and turned to the dark side and everything, but Han chose to then also turn and run. Away from his marriage, away from his responsibilities, back to his old life, everything like that. Whereas Indy, I think a big difference between those two storylines, and I get where people on the baseline are coming from, of these are very similar to each other, but I really think the key difference is that Mutt is dead, and that it's not like Indy went, I got into a fight with my son and I've been avoiding him. It's I didn't know my son for the first 20 years of his life.
Right.
And then I only really got, what I doing the rough math, 15 to 20 years with him, probably closer to 15. And I think, and then he was taken away, without any interference by Indy or Marion on that front. It was just, what a lot of people went through back then of, rebellious, children being like, well, I'm gonna enlist, and you see that all the time in different movies, whether that's the Korean War or the Vietnam War, and I think it really worked well for this, and I really just connected with it on that deeper level, to the point where I didn't even think about Han and Ben. Obviously I did think about Han and Leia versus Indy and Marion, because that's, how can you watch the end of this movie and not have the thought, oh man, I wish that could have happened with Carrie, which obviously they did. I mean, they did reconcile and they did hug and everything and have their moments in The Force Awakens, but I didn't even think about the Kylo Ren of it all, just because I thought it was so different. I really didn't even see that comparison in my head. And to touch on the first part of your question of just how did it make me feel, and do you think he needed to die for the storyline, I just think it really was one of the things that motivated why Indy is so down on himself. You know what I mean? Because I think they could have done the easy Luke Skywalker thing, where it's, I failed for this particular reason, so now I'm shutting myself off from everybody. Indy is very different from that, and he starts the movie admitting to Helena, saying, I want Marion back. I couldn't console my wife, and so, she left me. And it's because I have this thing that's broken inside of me because of the loss of my son, that I was helpless to deal with my wife's pain. And so I thought that all of that worked really, really well. And I thought, to answer the other part, if Shia LaBeouf was still in good standings, do I think he would be in this? I don't think so, only because even if he did a lot to repair his other relationships or his image, which he has done, to a certain extent, and different things going on with him right now, but I think at the heart of it, like, Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford sound like they really do not like that guy. So
didn't he say I think Spielberg went a little bit too far and Harrison Ford shut the fuck up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically, yeah. And he said something like, I actually forget if this was Ford or Spielberg, but one of them was basically like, I think sometimes an actor's job is to. Oh yeah, they were like, because there was some paparazzi picture, and Steven Spielberg said to him, like, hey, maybe when you're shooting one of my movies, don't pick your nose in public.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
because like there was these
Yeah.
paparazzi photos where he's just like, and they're just like, kind of like conduct yourself a little bit better. And I
Right.
think so. I think just those two men in particular, I think had a very older Hollywood approach of like, dude, like if you're gonna be a fucking movie star, like get your shit together. Like I don't want to, have to be
Fair
worrying
enough.
about you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, it's
Right.
not like Steven Spielberg directed this movie.
Yeah.
So if he was in a very different reasons for their kind of careers declining, but if he was in like a Brendan Fraser or a Ke Huy Quan like resurgence, maybe. But at the same time, it's like they didn't have time to put Ke Huy Quan in this, so I think they really just did what they thought was gonna service the story.
Right.
But yeah, what do you want to talk about next?
Next character I would really like to talk about is Mads Mikkelsen as Dr.
Yes.
Voller.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and this will probably lead us into a discussion, maybe a quick discussion about the intro.
Okay, yeah.
And that. But for me, it was just, and again, I think it might just come down to the dial.
Mhm.
I just didn't feel as though he was very, very menacing. I don't know. I was not a fan, and I maybe this isn't even a legit criticism, because it's like this in literally every movie, maybe except for Crystal Skull, I guess.
Yeah.
Where the main villain is not really doing any of the attacking or anything. Like Voller the whole time has these two henchmen that are running around, but that's literally how it is in every single movie, except for Cate Blanchett, really. And even she is henchmen, but she's still doing fighting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not just that. Maybe I don't know. I just didn't feel a sense of impending doom or anything from him. And I thought the way that and again, no fault of his, but like I thought that his ending was a little just kind of, well, there he goes. Like there was no kind of, I was expecting a more intimate kind of between him and Indy set piece or something to kind of end the movie. And it just really wasn't that. I thought he was interesting at the beginning. I will say that, on the train, and however many years prior to current.
It's supposed to be 25 years before.
Yeah. But I was also just very confused on how he was in the position he was in, because I said to you, when he kind of reveals himself to the CIA, I guess, and they're like, he's going under the name of like he's a professor from the University of Alabama, and then like he turns and the CIA is like, oh my god. I'm like, but I'm like, wait a minute, they really don't know it, because at the beginning it seems kind of like that they know he's a Nazi, or he was a Nazi, and that they're just like working with him, because USA hiring Nazi scientists, etc., all that stuff. So I figured that's what it was. But I just got the vibe that they really didn't know that he was a Nazi. And I'm like, well, how the fuck did you not know he was a Nazi?
Mm-hmm. I think that too, and I think you're right. I think the movie doesn't really address that at all, and leaves you with those questions. But I think the idea, and I said this to you there, is like, I think the idea is like the kind of dissemination of power, or of information.
Yeah.
That when NASA recruited him, well then again, I'm just saying, whoever recruited the people for Project Paperclip, which is what it was called, I don't know if I think that sometimes they didn't know that they were Nazis. Like, I think that information was hidden, because when he says that his name is, Schmidt, and he's from, he's a professor at the University of Alabama, I think that is like almost his cover story. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think a lot of people in America just saw these people and just only knew of their new identity. And I think, maybe people higher up at the CIA did know that he was a Nazi, but what's her name? Who else want to say? Shawnette Renee Wilson.
Yeah.
as Mason, who's a character in the earlier parts of the movie, who plays kind of the main on the ground CIA agent that's kind of embedded with Mads Mikkelsen and kind of his crew at the beginning. She definitely doesn't know that he's a Nazi. But like maybe her boss does, I think it was just maybe one of those things, but I will give you the movie makes no mention of it. So it's kind of like, well, who knows that he's a Nazi? Does another person we haven't talked about yet, Boyd Holbrook, as Kleber, like, does he know that he's a Nazi? Which at the end of the movie, it kind of shows, pretty sure he knew. He's putting on the uniform.
Just real quick.
Go for it.
One thing I will say, because I feel like I've been pretty negative on his character. One moment that I thought at the beginning where I was like, oh, okay, this guy, when he's talking to the waiter at the hotel and that whole conversation.
Yes, that was great.
That was like, whoa, okay. Then I was like, okay, maybe we got something here.
Yeah.
I think he says, like, just so you know, like, you didn't win the war, Hitler just lost.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, okay. And then I also thought it was interesting that I thought for sure it was going to be like, oh, I'm going to go back and, tell, Hitler and tell everybody that, like, oh, this is how you win. But he's like, no, I'm going to go back and I'm going to win.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back and tell Hitler. I'm going to win it and then take all the credit. And all. So I thought that was more interesting too. Because usually I feel like it's portrayed as like, not that the higher ups in the Nazis didn't have their own aspirations or something, but it's always portrayed as like, I'm going to go back to the Fuhrer and give him this information so he can win.
Yeah. I think touching on it with Voller, right? Yeah, Dr. Voller. I for me, the scene with the gosh, what is that? The hotel worker. What do you call that? Like the room service guy, the waiter. Whatever you want to call that. I forget the name of it. But I was gonna say bellhop, but that's like luggage. The room service guy. I thought that scene was incredible in building up Voller's menace and kind of just the way that he's kind of dismissive of humanity and of like human life and just not really caring and just almost like the whole like, oh, playing with your food type thing, type of villain, that we've seen a bunch before. And that really worked for me. I mean, for me, that scene was great. Would I have liked more scenes specifically like that? Yeah, I would have. But like another one that really, really worked for me, because I guess I'll say too, I think this is probably, I don't know. I think he's my favorite villain since Belloc. Like, I would say like maybe second best villain. Right. So, for me, Dr. Voller, I really, really liked everything with the waiter, everything later on at the kind of auction. I liked their kind of banter back and forth with him and Indy, but I do agree with you. I think I would have liked a more, and obviously they do have a lot of interaction on the plane in the third act of the movie. They're kind of yelling at each other and arguing back and forth kind of the whole time. But like you said, I would have liked to at least have Indy have a more direct impact on his death. But also, then again, I feel like that's every single Indiana Jones movie. Indy never really does have a direct impact on the deck, except maybe Temple of Doom. Yeah. So I kind of liked the idea, that like the other movies, he's kind of consumed, Voller, that is kind of consumed by the thing that, he's always gone after. And for me, I think that moment did work where you just see, kind of for the first time in an Indiana Jones movie, because obviously Belloc and Tote and all of them have no time to react. Donovan has no time to react to what's happening to him. Spelko has no time to react to her brain getting exploded. But I liked that Voller did have that time. He had that, like, minute to himself of just the absolute failure on his face. I really felt that, and I really liked that being a part of the movie. But at that same token, I do think I would have liked him to actually be taken out as a more direct result of his actions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked it to be maybe that they do turn the plane around and they try to get back through, but then maybe something like that doesn't work, or maybe even go further and say that Voller gets out of the plane. Maybe he tries to take the original dial from Archimedes or something, and then maybe he's literally killed by the past, and maybe, you know, he's killed in the moment that Archimedes is supposed to be killed instead of Archimedes or something, you know, something like that. But I did like his death, but I do agree with you that it's like they just kind of, the plane just kind of crashed. And it was just like, you know what I mean, like that. I liked what it meant for the story, but I do think it was a little bit of the least showy death of any of the indie villains, just because it was just kind of so matter of fact. It was just like, yeah, live with your failure, you're about to crash into the side of a hill. And that's exact. But then I will say, when they show his body, obviously it's very right there with all the other indie villains, where he is just absolutely scorched. You know, he looks like Anakin Skywalker. But I did like all that, and I really liked Mads Mikkelsen in this role. Let's talk a little bit overall about the kind of three structures of the movie now. Or actually, one character I want to touch on specifically before we do move on is Ethan Isidore as Teddy. Before we kind of go and finish up by just talking about the movie overall. What did you how did Teddy hit you in this? Was he a character that you enjoyed being in this movie? I know I've seen a lot of people kind of split on this. That they thought, you know, I've seen people saying, you know, he avoided every pitfall of young actors and he wasn't annoying, oh my god, he was the most annoying thing in the movie. So like, where do you kind of fall on that, and just kind of Teddy's overall presence?
Yeah, I don't think he's like better than Short Round in any way, but I didn't find myself being like annoyed with him or anything. I thought him and when him and Phoebe Waller-Bridge are going back and forth, you know, I thought there was a good relationship there. We did get a little kind of background on him as well. I don't know if you only get like a little bit of the whole kind of plane thing with flying and all that stuff. Yeah, you know, we get it when, you know, Indy first arrives in whatever, I forget what country or what city it was at the
I think it was Morocco. I think that
Morocco, yeah. You know, he's like flying the plane, and it looks like there's like a pilot that's like on a layover, and he's like telling him, "Oh, you gotta, you know, do the thing with the wings and all that stuff."
Yeah.
You know, we see that, and then we don't see it again until like close to the very end. And you know, I would say I enjoyed that kind of setup. I do wish we had a little bit more of the whole flying thing, and him kind of, you know, getting to that point. But no, I thought he was, you know, he was fine. I wasn't like annoyed or anything. I was like, will this kid shut up or anything? Trying to think of like all the moments he had. You know, there's some comedic moments during the chase scenes and stuff like that, but you know, he was fine. I'll say it was fine.
Yeah, I thought he was fine too. I mean, I definitely liked him in the movie, like, and I really liked his dynamic with Phoebe Waller-Bridge with Helena. I thought it was earned. I believed that these two characters have each other's backs.
Right.
And I think that's important. Just like with Short Round, like when he just shows up, it's just like, okay, I've never met this character before, but I believe if Indy trusts him, I trust him. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of goes a long way, and I think Teddy has a little bit of that aspect as well. Although I do agree, I think, you know, Short Round, you know, he could drive and he could do a lot of stuff, and he was a very capable person. But I think that even the director and the writers kind of knew, okay, this guy's only been able to fly a plane, you know, so well. So I think that's kind of why at the end of the movie they have that like other pilot wake up to like fly them back, which I did think that was pretty funny.
So like, where the fuck did this guy come
Yeah, he's
from?
just asleep in the back
they
of
like
his
kind
plane.
of played off as like, is there a Nazi in there or something?
Yeah,
no,
it's kind of like
it's the pilot of the
Yeah, you just see like the back of his head at first, and he's just
Unless
like,
he was a Nazi. You know, that whole base was Nazis, so maybe he was a Nazi.
yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
like,
I
was
don't
he a
think he was
Nazi
speaking German, so.
or was he just a guy that was just, stuck there or
Right.
something? I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I like Teddy overall, but let's kind of shift focus here to wrap up, or to not really end things, but let's just shift focus here to the movie overall. And
Oh,
throughout
wait a minute.
this,
Real quick, we gotta talk. We didn't get into it, but we gotta talk about the intro with
oh,
Toby
that's what I was
Jones
just
and all
about to
that.
say.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move over to kind of the, again, biggest issue with the movie. I think a little too overstuffed, a little too long. So let's get into the 5 acts of this movie, because there really kind of is truly 5 acts to this movie. So let's talk about the prologue. Let's talk about the opening, the noose, the explosion, the Nazis, the kind of him infiltrating it, the de-aging, obviously, and then the train sequence. So what were your kind of overall thoughts on that stuff? And if you want to start with the de-aging, we can get that out of the way and talk about
let's start with that.
What your thoughts were.
The best it looked, I think, was that one shot from the trailer, and that was it.
Where they first take the bag off the head.
Yeah, and I agree with you because I remember the trailer. I was like, "Holy crap, that looks really good." And then in the movie, I was kind of like, "Man, maybe not that good." And it really suffers during action and stuff like that. You know, it's really hard. It's got to be terribly hard to get that tracking all correct and look right.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was, I don't know if he was doing. Did they say, Harrison, go do what you would sound like 40 years ago? And
it felt definitely uneven.
It was like, I don't know if it was like computer generated or like something was helping with his voice, or if he was doing an impression, but it just did not work, the voice. I was like, you're better off just having him sound old.
Yeah.
Like it was just very like, and even like that, I was like, I don't even think that's what he sounded like in like Raiders or Crusade or anything like that. I was like, I just don't. That voice just doesn't match. It's a little too gravelly. Like, I don't know.
I think for me, I turned to you and I said that for me, like when he's not looking at the camera, like when you can't see the eyes, I think it looked exceptional. And I do think it's kind of one step forward, 2 steps back, in the sense of, like, you look at the first Ant-Man movie, which is coming up on a decade old, and you see Michael Douglas, and there's people that still will say that it's never looked better than it did in that first opening scene in Ant-Man with Michael Douglas. And I still think, like I said, that effect is now 9 years old, and I still think that looks phenomenal there. But then I think it's a double-edged sword of the tech keeps getting better to de-age these people, but also the demands keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like you said, this is not just, we need this. We want a conversation with Hank Pym, Agent Carter, and Howard Stark. So we need to make all these ages work for this conversation. Same also, another one that I think a lot of people agree on looks fantastic is Kurt Russell in Guardians 2. And then I think the closest example to this one is Captain Marvel with Nick Fury.
I think, it even looked good in Secret Invasion Episode 2.
Yeah, in Secret Invasion Episode 2, I thought it looked really good on that as well. Also, that's the second time that Sam Jackson has been de-aged in that capacity, so, they can always work on that more. This is really the first time that Lucasfilm, for sure, but has tried to de-age Harrison Ford, and that does kind of go into it, because I think the Michael Douglas one, he's been de-aged in everything but Ant-Man 3, I believe. And I think that they just keep working on it, and it can keep getting better. This is their first time out de-aging Harrison Ford, and it was for a 25-minute uninterrupted action sequence where he is the main person you're following for all 25 minutes directly on camera. Like, it's one of the most... Because even Nick Fury was for the entire movie of Captain Marvel, but the movie wasn't called Nick Fury. You know what I mean? Like, he was a secondary main character. This is the main character of your film for, 25, 30 minutes almost, being fully de-aged, and I think it really showed, and I just don't think it was there, and I don't really know what you would do to supplement it. I don't really know what other direction you could go with it overall. But yeah, I think it didn't ruin the sequence for me, which is I think what a lot of people were saying. I also saw a lot of people saying, some people that were really harsh on the movie saying, oh, the prologue is the best part of the movie, or oh, the prologue's the only thing worth seeing. I didn't find that to be true at all. I don't even think that the prologue is the best part of the movie. But that being said, as much as they kind of could attain it, I think it did feel like a classic Indiana Jones adventure. And, there are scenes where the train is going by and you can clearly tell that Indy's a little CGI guy, jumping from car to car. And it's like... and it's like I see people being like, see, it's not, the magic isn't there, and I'm like, yeah, but you can't, the magic be there for any movie film that tried to do that? Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean though, is like you can't drag Harrison Ford behind a truck like you used to. Yeah. You're not legally able to in Hollywood.
And he got injured on this movie.
He got injured on this movie. Yeah, he broke his leg. Like that's what I mean is it's just so. When I hear people say that, like, it just doesn't feel like it used to, because it's not made like it used to be.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that. First of all, your actor is literally 80 years old. Second of all, you can't film stunts like that in Hollywood anymore. If you have a train top sequence, you're not going to be able to film that on a real train with your actual actors on top of the train. Unless it's Tom Cruise, absolutely. But even that, it's like, they do everything as humanly possible, or they do everything humanly possible to keep it as safe as possible when they're filming those scenes for, like, Mission Impossible. And also, it's like Mission Impossible is built around scenes like that. So that's why they can look like that. This is just one part of one segment of the movie that is a movie that has, like, 9 or 10 action sequences, which is a lot. There is a lot of stuff in this movie. But overall, I did really like the prologue. Like I said, it didn't take me out of it, but, it was noticeably not the best. And the voice thing, too, it felt like sometimes Harrison Ford was trying to do his best approximation of his old voice, or his younger voice, but then sometimes it just sounded like 80-year-old Harrison Ford, like, entirely. And again, I don't really know. That's not Harrison Ford's fault. I just think that they were really pushing the bounds of kind of what's possible right now with it. And then I see people out there too going, they shouldn't have used de-aging. They should have used deep fake. The problem is that whether it's a CGI de-aged face on a different on a stunt actor's body, or it's a deep fake on a stunt actor's body, I got news for you, man. That body is getting replaced with a CGI body if you're doing a train heist in the middle of the night, running over the top from car to car on an exploding giant, machine turret anti-aircraft gun. Like, it's not gonna... Yeah. The people that are like, they should have used deepfake. This is not Luke Skywalker standing still in a soundstage, in the volume. This is a humongous CGI fest to begin with. The castle is exploding around him. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like in Last Crusade when, him and his dad were breaking out of the castle. They burned a room and broke through a window. It wasn't like the castle was exploding around them. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels different because I think filmmaking is just different. And I don't know, that's not really anybody's fault. It's just you can't really expect things to look like they did back then. Anything else in the prologue, or do you want to head over a little bit further up to New York City?
No, I think, it was, for me, it was, enjoyable, but, I wouldn't say it was probably the best part of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that I really didn't understand. The people that were like, the prologue is the only decent thing worth seeing in the movie. I'm like, I don't know what movie you were watching. because I thought it was fun, but it's just like, I don't know. But let's talk about it. So prologue ends, and then we catch back up with the modern day Indy. Wakes up in his apartment. The Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour is being blasted by his downstairs neighbor. You get a kind of fun scene with him being the old man of, banging on his door, telling him to turn the radio down. We get Professor Jones in his habitat. He's no longer, I believe, in the previous movies, he was in Chicago there, and then obviously he changed his teaching job in Crystal Skull. So now he's working at Hunter College in New York City. It's also Moon Day. It's fresh off of the moon landing, and Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, all of them are going to be doing the parade through New York City. And then we kind of meet Helena. We're introduced to her. We're introduced to Voller and the Nazis and everything, and that basically results in an all-out chase throughout the city on horseback, in a car, on a motorcycle. Kind of a classic Indiana Jones chase in kind of a public setting, but a setting that we've never seen before with New York City. So what were your kind of thoughts on this whole chase? Did it work for you? What were some of your favorite stuff? Or did you have any issues with it?
Yeah, I'd say it did work for me. For a decent part. There's going back to De-aging real quick. There's some parts when he's riding on the horse throughout the city that he is kind of. It looked like they kind of
the head replacement. Yeah, the head replacement didn't.
He's
look
not
great.
Actually on the horse. That in the trailer looked not great, and it didn't look great here either.
Yeah.
But I liked the introduction to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. I liked all that. I liked their kind of showing her the dial in the archive. I thought the mass killing was a bit much. I don't know why we had to shoot all those civilians.
Yeah.
That was a little too much for me. But I liked the kind of kidnapping him, throwing him in the back of the truck, driving throughout the city. The hell no, we won't go. That was great. I think there was a reference to the I Like Ike, I believe, in there somewhere as well. From Kingdom
Yeah, I think somebody had it on a sign, but then the big Ike reference is not until the end of the movie.
Oh, the end of the movie.
Yeah, which we'll talk about.
But yeah, no, I had a good time with that, I'd say. Again, just a little bit less on the whole. I don't know. I guess I get they're Nazis, but I don't know, that whole kind of just like shooting 3 professors in the university was a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. A bit much.
Yeah, it was like I think it was 2 professors and then his secretary. Because his secretary is the one at the end of that scene that he goes up and actually like holds her like hand and like like has a little bit of a moment with her. But I don't know if I'm just like a monster or what, but I've seen a couple people saying how much the kind of civilian deaths in this really like was a little bit too much for them, and I think that's totally fair. For me, this is like awful, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised that a Lucasfilm or Disney production would still be willing to do something like that in a movie. So I thought that was good, but also it's like, for me, it wasn't really worse than anything we've seen in like a Captain America movie. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen, civilian deaths in Winter Soldier and Civil War and a bunch of other different things. But also I do get the fact that like seeing people just randomly gunned down in something like Andor or something like, Rogue One, is different when it's, New York City in what, not modern day, but, relatively, normal setting. So it feels like real people, but I really like the New York sequence. I absolutely saw, some of the issues with the kind of head replacement, particularly in the bright sunlight of the outdoor sequence. But then once it goes down into the subway, I thought that was really, really fun and inventive, that he took the horse down into the subway and that he was being chased by Boyd Holbrook's character. And then he finally got away from him just because, the horse can go on different terrain and the motorcycle had to stop. And I thought that was really interesting. And then kind of having the near miss with the train, it just was like classic Indiana Jones moments for me that I thought really, really worked. But yeah, overall, I really like the New York segments there. But let's talk a little bit about Morocco. So now we're a little bit further along here. We have Salah going to him. Indy kind of making the decision that he's going to have to go after Helena to get this dial back because he doesn't want it falling into the wrong hands, obviously, because he may not believe in its properties, but as he says multiple times throughout this movie, he doesn't really know what he believes as much as how much he believes in it. So you have Salah kind of getting him ready to go on the plane, and he goes, I also brought my passport if you want me to bring me along, and he's like, Salah, I need to do this my own, and then we just get absolutely classic Harrison Ford Indiana Jones look with bringing back my favorite look from The Last Crusade, which is the classic Indy look, but with a necktie and his little satchel. I thought was fantastic when he showed up in that Moroccan hotel and gets off the elevator, and he's just got the full getup with the leather jacket and the necktie. I was just like, man, this guy is back. Like I just loved it. But then that leads into meeting Teddy, going through everything into, they're called tuk-tuks, which are the little three-wheeled cart kind of motorcycle things that they were all chasing each other in. So what were your thoughts on kind of overall Morocco, meeting Teddy, kind of dealing with all that, and then the that tuk-tuk kind of car chase sequence, which again, I liked that sequence, but I did feel like it went on a little long.
Yeah, I agree with the chase sequence. I definitely felt like it stayed its welcome a little bit too long. And again, you kind of see, like I said, the age of Harrison Ford, the whole kind of going back and forth with the cars, and those quick kind of cuts to kind of hide that it's not him, going doing all that stuff. I love that scene at the airport between Indy and Salah. I thought that was great. And again, John Rhys Davies not in this movie much, but when he is, I thought he does a really good job. But yeah, I would say, like, again, I didn't dislike anything about the chase scene in Morocco. I thought the whole kind of being on that cart was a little goofy, if I'm being honest. But
really, okay.
Yeah, I didn't dislike anything about the chase. It was just, like you said, just a little too long. It felt like we were there it really felt like an hour, like a half an hour or something.
Yeah.
Like, it was very long.
And I think in reality it was like 22 minutes. Like, I mean, that's the thing is, like I said, this is really kind of a 5-act movie, and each act is a full half hour. Like, this is not a quick movie. I mean, you look at, I don't know off the top of my head, what is Temple of Doom? Like 2 hours, 145, something like that. I mean, this is a full hour longer than that. And I think you do feel it. I didn't feel that way about the carts. I actually really liked the kind of the tuk-tuks, the cart thing. I liked that as a change of pace with kind of how light they were. Like, there's that one moment where Indy they accidentally kind of not crash, but they like stop short and then kind of like jump up a few steps, and the cart gets like wedged. And he was like trying to back it up, and we were like, just get out and move it. And then he literally just puts his leg out and just pushes off from the thing because they're so like light and kind of agile. And so I kind of liked the like quick turns and everything. But the biggest thing for me that didn't really work for that was they're in these carts and they're bobbing and weaving. The whole thing with Helena's fiance or ex-fiance also chasing them. It just felt so unnecessary to me with that whole thing. I did think it was funny when, she was like, when Indy was like, I'm not going to die because of your gambling debts. And Teddy was like, well, technically it's also loan repayment. I thought that was funny that he was like, well, it's not just all gambling debts. But I really, the whole thing with, and the character's name, Raheem, who was her, ex-fiance or whatever, chasing her, and I don't know, I thought there was parts that were charming and parts that were funny, but overall I really thought that you could have cut out that entire plot of her ex-fiance chasing them and all that, because you're already dealing with Voller. Just focus on that, chase him out to the harbor, to wherever their boat or whatever. Like I feel like you really could have just tidied up this sequence a lot, like a lot. But I still enjoyed it. All right, next thing is something that we kind of already touched on and already talked about. The boat and diving scene. You know, obviously after Morocco, they know that the next place that they want to go is they're going to go to Casablanca, and then from there go, I guess, to, where was it? Was it Spain that they were meeting up with Antonio Banderas to get on the boats and everything?
Something like that.
So wherever that ended up being, basically to go to this shipwreck. So anything else? I know we talked already about the kind of boat sequence and on the boat, but anything about the actual diving sequence with the eels and everything that you wanna touch on?
No, but I did actually. Let me Google it now.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know when flippers were invented.
Oh, there you go. While he is Googling when flippers were invented, I'll say the diving scene itself, although, like I said, I think that you can kind of cut out and sandwich together that entire part of the movie. I thought the diving scene itself was refreshing to me. It's like kind of what's an element that you could bring to an Indiana Jones kind of set piece that you haven't had before, and that is kind of taking it underwater. I guess that's something we haven't really seen before in terms of diving, and I kind of liked seeing Indy in this like diving suit, because it's really one of the last kind of adventurer things that he really hasn't done on screen. So I did like it for that, but I do think, again, I think it was overly long and just a little too repetitive to be.
Yeah,
honest.
I'm seeing a lot of conflicting kind of dates.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with they were maybe a thing, but maybe not.
Okay.
I just thought that was funny in that moment. But yeah, nothing really to add. I thought I like I said, I went to the bathroom during the whole kind of diving scene. You know, I saw that one eel like pop out right away, and that was about it. But I thought it was fine. Nothing special. Again, I feel like where that whole kind of stuff really is at its best is when Phoebe Waller-Bridge is walking around giving her talk and all that stuff, and then like you said, it all gets kind of wiped out at the end.
Yeah, it's just kind of all kind of undone by him. Right. It's like, why? What is even the point of this kind of fake out if he's just going to look through binoculars and be like, oh, they're going that way, let's follow them. Right. And then also that leads us to our next thing I want to talk about, which is going to Sicily, to the kind of cave, the Echo Cave there, to look for Archimedes' tomb. And realizing on the side of it that they go, whoa, what the heck? This Phoenix has propellers on it. He's wearing this modern day watch. Maybe he really did get the dial to work for him. And then before we get into the ending of this movie, which I'm sure is going to be the last thing we talk about, but probably the biggest thing we talk about, I want to get your thoughts on this whole, what you were saying, that just the dial overall just didn't work for you. Because for me, I actually really did like the dial, and I liked that, in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you have Ox the whole time being like, oh, these interdimensional beings and, I don't know, like aliens, and it's like, no, you got to understand it's this specific thing. I liked that they were like, they never once throughout the movie went, oh, the dial is a time machine. Right. They never once say that, and they don't harp you over the head with, oh, the dial's a time machine. We got to keep this time machine away from the Nazis. They don't say that at all. They just go, well, Archimedes designed this to detect fissures in time, which I thought was a very good way to kind of avoid that whole, like, time travel MacGuffin, because it's more like, listen, I don't know if this is real or if this is all just bullshit, but either way, we got to keep it out of this guy's hands, because if it is real or if there is something possible, who knows? And then they do leave you with a little bit of breadcrumbs of the Toby Jones's notebook having the date circled of whatever it was, June, or you know what I just realized? Oh no, was it the same date in the movie as the release date was? Was the date June 30th, 1939? Or am I
thought they
just
said
like,
August.
okay, maybe it was. I just
You're
completely
wrong.
forgot, and then I was like, am I just thinking of the fact that that's when the movie came out?
Mhm.
Um, but I did like that, and then because it really kept me guessing right up to the end of not really knowing what was gonna like literally not knowing what was gonna happen next. Like that is something that you could say for just about every other blockbuster, good or bad, that has come out this year. Is you
Mhm.
can almost always, by the time you're getting to the end of the movie, know how it's gonna go. Even
Right.
something like Guardians 3, maybe not really with Spider-Verse with the kind of reveal right at the end of that movie. But you still kind of had a general idea of where Spider-Verse was going to wrap up. This movie, to me, once we get out of Archimedes' tomb, I really had no idea where the hell we were going to be going with this next.
Mhm.
So, what is your kind of meaning about the dial didn't really work for you? Just because for me, I thought it worked very well, but
When I say, I don't know. I think the whole kind of, I don't think the idea of like what you said with like, oh, it's, it detects fissures in time, and it's not, they don't outright say it's a time machine. But
mm-hmm,
I think in my mind the whole time I was like, well, it's a time machine. So I was like, I didn't really buy into the whole kind of lore aspect of it, where
mm-hmm,
I'm sure Archimedes, when he's building it, he's not like, oh, I can go forward and I can go forward back in time, where he's saying like, oh, fissures, and he's using all these other descriptions of
mm-hmm.
it. But in my head, I'm like, well, no, it's a time machine. Like I guess you're just gonna go back in time with it. It just didn't. I don't. It just wasn't. It was, and it shouldn't be a step too far because again, we had aliens in the last one,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, that was more believable than this for some reason. And I can't like quite just pinpoint what it is. I'm probably correct. I'm probably in the
Mm-hmm.
very very small minority with that
Yeah.
because I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, this works way better than fucking aliens.
Yeah, I mean, to
Um,
me, I think this definitely worked way better than the aliens.
right.
But
Yeah, which is fair. Fair
yeah.
enough. And maybe on a rewatch, I'll be like, no, you know what, this
Hmm.
does work definitely better. Um, but just speaking of that, something else that I brought up, I think I haven't brought up yet in this review, but something that I felt like this movie also was lacking was a sense of I didn't get enough kind of search around discovery, kind of problem solve. Nothing to the extent where like, Last Crusade we had, you know, we had going down into the cavern. We had the X marks the spot. We had
Yeah.
the three what's it called? To get to the Grail.
Yeah, the three
All that stuff.
challenges
I
or
felt like
whatever.
this movie was lacking that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I don't do we really count the melting of the wax off the tablet? I don't know if that really
Yeah,
counts.
that
And
was
then
like really the only one besides the end, to be honest.
like I even like I would count the kind of water displacement thing.
Yeah.
Which was that water or was that gas?
It was water, but he was saying that the air was filled with methane gas.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like that was slowly killing them. But yeah, I
Right.
think to talk on that, and we're gonna talk about that when we get to our little grading of it. Um but yeah, I think the kind of puzzles, like the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle
Yes.
aspect,
Yes.
once we get to Sicily
Mm-hmm.
and they have to go to that cave and they're like, oh, we have to wait for the tourists to clear out and everything. Once they're there,
Yeah.
that's where it all is. Like that, it's all
Right.
there
Yeah.
in the back half of the movie, basically. Aside from the one thing of like, oh no, we have to melt the wax. Which again I thought worked, but it was just that was really the only thing, because then in New
Mm-hmm.
York it's more, oh, we're on the run and we have to escape from New York.
Mm-hmm.
In Morocco it's just, oh, let's try to get the dial away from this guy. Oh, it didn't succeed. And then even retrieving the tablet thing from the shipwreck,
Mm-hmm.
which again I'm not a huge fan of that in the movie. Even that, it's not like a puzzle. It's not like, oh, where is it in the shipwreck? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we know exactly where it is, but the trouble is we only have 3 minutes to get it. You know what I mean? Like that was more so the concern. It
Right.
wasn't about like using ingenuity to find it or anything. It was just like, I have a pretty good idea that this is where it is. And again, I think a weaker element of the kind of diving and shipwreck thing was that they were like, yeah, half of the ship fell onto this part of the sea, but then really the rest of the ship fell all the way to the ocean floor. And it's like, okay, you're telling me that in hundreds of years nobody was like, hey, do you think we should go check the other side of that ship? Like that. So that was a little far-fetched for me as well. But let's just go for it and talk about the ending of this movie. Voller has both halves of the dial now after they find Archimedes' tomb and see that he's wearing a watch, and they go, oh my god, I guess Archimedes did travel to the future. At the time, I was thinking, again, to the nature of I didn't really know what was going to happen next. I was thinking at the time, oh wow, maybe Archimedes was like, has traveled even further forward than like where this movie takes place. Like, yeah, like maybe he's been to like our modern day. And so then Voller has both halves of this dial. He sets the coordinates. He thinks he's going to 1939 to kill Hitler. But it turns out continental drift had it wrong, and the date. So basically, let's actually just go with this.
It's a little kind of confusing, too.
I was just going to say, because I have done a lot of thinking on this, and I think pretty well. And again, I think this is a big trend that we've been seeing in blockbusters just this year is like, I can make sense of things that happen like after the fact when I think on it, but I think a lot of these movies are like explaining the wrong things. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like, so the way that I took it was, so to kind of jump to it, when they do time travel, it's not 1939, it's the year 214 BC, at the siege of Syracuse, in ancient Sicily under the Roman Empire. So the way that I took it was when Toby Jones was writing down in his notebook 1939, I think that's the original date that Archimedes, did the math for. And then the whole continental drift thing where he's like, oh, it's been moving, so it's going to be off. I think that in that moment, Indy thinks, he thinks he's going back to 1939, but it might be like 1909 or something like that. But then when you get back there and you realize, and again, I think foreshadowing and kind of cluing the audience in on something for later on is really strong in this movie with the magic trick, the card trick that Helena does to Indy, where he picks the card and she goes, oh, it's the 7 of diamonds or whatever. And he goes, oh, how'd you do that? And she says to him, it's a false choice. I make you think that you have freedom to pick, but really you pick the card that I want you to pick. That's exactly what Archimedes did with the dial, because the dial is not a time machine. It only brings you back to Archimedes, because Archimedes built it so that someone in the future could come back to save them. And then the whole thing of the Dial of Destiny is that it was always Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones was always there. So like even when Raiders of the Lost Ark is happening, it's literally his destiny that he has already gone back in time to see Archimedes. And you know what I mean? I liked that was the element of time travel they went with, that it wasn't like a branching timeline or the, spaghetti multiverse from The Flash or anything. It was just the kind of bootstrap paradox of you traveled back in time to here because you were always going to travel back in time to here. So I kind of liked that at the end of the day, it wasn't just a machine that you could enter any date and then travel there. It was specifically calculated that Archimedes wanted somebody from his time, 1939, but then because of the continental drift and everything, Archimedes was wrong. It didn't end up being 1939. It ended up being 1969. And so it's basically that the dial only ever connects 1969 to 214 BC. And again, I don't think that is well explained in the movie. but that is, to the best of my ability, I think what is going on there is that Archimedes designed it. He just picked a random time in the future, and it ended up being 1939. But then by the time all the tectonic plates had shifted and everything, he ended up being off by 30 years. So it wasn't that they were going back to 1939, it was that 1969 was going back to 214 BC. I think so that's kind of the technical aspects of it down, which I'm okay with having to think about it for a second, and then I actually ended up liking what that meant and everything like that. But talking a little bit more on the kind of emotional and kind of thematic thing, I loved the whole idea of Indy, this guy whose whole life is archaeology and research and history and loving history. He is now seeing it with his own eyes, and being a part of it. And he, think about the Ark. Belloc says, we'll give you the girl, blow up the Ark, we don't care. He can't bring himself to do it. He doesn't blow up the Ark because he doesn't want to see that part of history erased. With the Grail, he goes, I can reach it, Dad. He wants the Grail still, and it's not until his dad tells him, you got to let it go. Same with Temple of Doom. It's fortune and glory up until he makes the better decision to say, I'm going to do the selfless thing and return these stones to the village to make their lives better. I like that they kept that same thing with he goes, just leave me here. And it's that same kind of thing. It's him saying, just leave me here. This is where I want to be, is to me the same thing of him saying, I can reach the cup. I can still get it. And then the companion there, the loved one that's going on this adventure with him, just like every other movie, has to be the one to say, either, Indiana, let it go, or, no, there's people that care about you in the present. There's people. And then when he wakes up again, he goes, who's waiting for me? Who is here? Mm-hmm. And it's like, even if he didn't know that Marion was coming back into his life, he has Helena, he has Sala, he has people that love and care about him. If he had stayed there, they would have never, ever seen him again. And so I liked the fact that Helena was the one that ended up having to literally knock him out because he wasn't going to come otherwise. Because it was just kind of that same stubborn Indiana Jones, where he, he kind of can't get out of his own way, because he's so attached to history. He's literally willing to die in pursuit of getting it. And it's always that loved one that has to come in to kind of pull him back from the abyss. So I really liked the way that the movie wrapped up, and then obviously coming back and waking up in the present, with Marion coming back in and everything. I really, really liked the ending of the movie. But what were your overall thoughts on the ending of the movie?
I told you, I said if he would have stayed, I understood why he wanted to stay, but I was like, if he would have stayed, I probably would have walked out, because I just feel like if you would have ended the movie with him being, during that time, nonetheless, the changing of history,
Yeah, exactly.
And that is brought up, just a few minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I liked the ending. I liked the, bringing back Marion. I knew, it wasn't really a surprise for me because I knew she was in it. I saw it on IMDb, so I knew she was showing up at some point. So that was good to see. I liked their kind of reconnection, the whole kind of, everybody leaving the room, oh, let's go get ice cream. Oh, she just brought some. Yeah, but there's better. We can.
Yeah, let's just go.
So I thought that was all good, I thought it was a little, I don't know, I was expecting maybe it's just like you're not supposed to kind of see that, but I was expecting more of a conversation to be seen. That wasn't. But overall, I'd say I was satisfied with the ending, I would say. But yeah, if he would have fucking stayed, I would have been like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah.
So I'm just very glad that didn't happen.
And I think too, it really is that part of it, that the more I think about it, the happier I am with the ending, because like I said, I don't know about you. I mean, did you feel that way or did you feel like you knew like where this was going? I mean, obviously there's really no way to know. I was shocked that
they went back.
There's really no way to know. And I like too that it's like Voller sees like the hill for like half a second and he's like, it's 1939 Sicily. And then the clouds part a little bit more and you see like the Targaryen fleet. Like,
Yeah, I was like, is that the
you
Fire Nation down
yeah,
there?
exactly. Like you see the fucking, pardon my French, the Holy Roman Empire. Like,
Yeah.
like that's a little jarring to be like, oh my god. And again, like I said earlier, with the foreshadowing, with the magic trick, and on his tomb and everything, another one is both the Romans and the I believe it's the Romans and the Greeks at that time, or the Romans and the Sicilians. I'm not sure how that's broken down, but the fact that both sides were like, oh, they have a dragon, and then in the middle of the movie, in the market at Sicily, you see there's like a little puppet show. I don't know if you remember this. There's like a puppet show that you see for like a minute, and it's a dragon blowing fire onto a Roman soldier.
Oh.
So it's like, it's kind of showing you that throughout the entire movie that this was always how things went. That Indy always traveled back in time. That a plane was always present at that battle. And so I thought that was really, really cool. Is that this movie didn't do a, oh, we've introduced time travel, so now time travel is going to affect everything else. It's much more the linear, non-multiverse time travel explanation, where it's just, no, actually, if Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark were to have found Archimedes' tomb back then, he still would have found the wristwatch, because he always was going to go back to Archimedes. Like, that always was going to happen, and Archimedes even says that to him. He says, you were always meant to come here. And that's what really gets you with the emotions, is when Indy starts crying when Archimedes says that to him, that you were always destined to come here. And so I think too, just the name of the movie, literally Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I think works so well, because it's literally his destiny to always come back in time, always influence events like this. And I just thought that worked really, really well. But anything else you want to touch on with the movie before we go into kind of this report card thing? But I think we pretty well touched on everything, unless there's stuff that I am forgetting.
I think we're all good on that front.
All right, so guys, first of all, let us know. Are you still with us on this? I know this has been kind of a long rambling thing, but in my opinion, even though I liked this movie a lot, I think it is kind of a longer rambling blockbuster. So I think it is fitting. But we're going to close out here with a little fun thing. And that is this channel, Star Wars Explained, for this past week and a half, has turned into Indiana Jones Explained. And Alex and Molly Damon over there have been doing a ton of awesome Indiana Jones videos. And so he did this thing called the Indiana Jones Report Card. And I wanted to give our try at that, just to see kind of where we fell on it. So this is going to be out of a overall score of 50, and you'll see what we mean as we go. So let's go ahead and launch right into this. Now, do you want to go just line by line, and we'll give our score per thing?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so just covering Dial of Destiny here. So the first one that he had was basically, these are all tropes or necessary items to be an Indiana Jones movie. And the first one that he had, I don't know about you, but I had no choice but to give this a 0, and that is the logo fade of the Paramount logo. It's the only Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, it's the only Indiana Jones movie that does not do that. Right. I know some people were thinking, obviously, the Paramount logo would fade into something. Although other people were thinking, well, maybe since it's Disney now, maybe the Disney castle would fade into the castle at the beginning of the movie. Neither of that happened. Nope. So for that one, I gave it a 0. What about you?
Yeah, I think I did 1 to 5, so I gave it a 1.
Okay, yeah. So I'll change it to a 1 too, because that's, spoiler, that's my only 0 on here. So I give that a 1. So the prologue overall next, I gave that a 4 out of 5.
Okay, I gave it a 3.
Okay,
just because de-aging and it's a little long.
Yeah,
too long.
Professor Jones. So just overall, how much is the college professor element relevant to the story? How does it appear? Is there awesome moments? I thought that we got some great Professor Jones in this with kind of a different Professor Jones looking back at Raiders, how, you know, the love you, I love you on the girl's eyes and everything. Like, he went from being the professor that everybody was chasing after to now he's the old guy that, you know, nobody wants to listen to anymore, essentially.
Yeah.
So I gave that a 4 out of 5, just because I really liked how much we got out of him.
I'm with you on that. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. Really agree with everything you said. I liked how, even though his class is kind of, you know, obviously very much tuned out, when Helena is answering his questions, he's very excited. At the thought that
he kind of
somebody
lights
else
up.
is doing it.
Yeah. He's like, oh my God,
So-
somebody knows.
Right, exactly.
And I do like
so,
the exacerbated, guys, this is on the final.
On the final,
Like, come on. I've talked, like, how many times are we going over
having
this?
flashbacks to college.
Yeah. All right, next one up here is the map / globetrotting of the adventure. I gave this one, I don't know about you, I gave this one a 5 out of 5. I think this is easily the Indiana Jones movie with the most locations and the most kind of overall globetrotting element. Because I think besides this, I would say Last Crusade, because you get Berlin, you get Egypt, you get a couple of these different places. But this one, I mean, you get New York City, you get London, you get Berlin with the train, you get you know, Casablanca, Morocco, South America, just tons and tons of places explored in this movie. So I give that a 5 out of 5 for the globe-trotting adventure aspect.
Yeah, I gave it a 4. Maybe just to knock it on the whole kind of middle of the ocean sea type of one. Where it was like,
that's fair.
why, you know?
Yeah. That one definitely has some influence in one of the ones coming up here. Next one, puzzles / booby traps. I know we kind of touched on this in our actual review portion. I'll go to you first. What did you give this out of 5 for puzzles / booby traps?
I gave this a 1
because
because of everything I said. It was just kind of like, you know, we got a few tiny ones, but, you know, nothing special in my opinion.
Yeah. I gave this one a 2. Only because I think it gave me the right amount of puzzles and booby traps for like the last 45 minutes of the movie.
Right.
So that earned it its 1. And then for me, you know, the kind of just explaining of stuff and the what am I trying to say? The kind of explaining of stuff, and then also the whole melting the wax and wood thing to, you know, to get the gold disc that was inside. That worked enough for me. So I gave that a 2 out of 5. Next one here, creepy crawlies. So obviously you're talking monkey brains in Temple of Doom. You're talking snakes in Raiders. You're talking, you know, all these different things. The monkeys again in actual monkeys in Crystal Skull. Where were you at with the creepy crawlies on this out of 5?
I had it at a 3, but I think I might go down to a 2, just because, you know, we had those bugs, and then I guess the eels count.
Yeah, so I would say the eels count. So I gave it a 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
So I thought you really got, you really got the eels, and you got the bugs in that one part of the cave where all the bugs were falling on them and they were just like freaking out.
Right.
So I thought that was good. So I gave that a 2 out of 5 for creepy crawlies. Just because there wasn't snakes, there wasn't a lot of these more exotic things. But I do think there was still some decent ones. Mm-hmm. All right. Next up here, giant henchmen. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I don't think there is something as good as the shirtless giant Nazi in the plane sequence, but I thought the giant henchman that was in this, I thought he had some decent moments, some fun stuff, punching Indy, and I think especially if you're comparing it to the rest of the franchise, I think it's the best at having a giant henchman, and just some of the funnier moments too, where he's trying to cross the wooden bridge and he's too heavy, and then his death with the way that Teddy takes him out, I thought was really, really effective. So for me, I think it's easily the second best giant henchman of the franchise. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. What about you?
I'll go 2.
Okay.
Wasn't really a fan of him. I'll be honest. Some points I thought it looked like he had anchor arms on for SpongeBob, where I was like, his arms don't look real sometimes
Yeah.
for some reason. Um, I like the way he was kind of taken out again. And I'll just bring it up real quick here. That bridge in the cave, no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. We see it break, and then later they carry him out on the same bridge, like it's fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know when they repaired it. And then the other thing, the tomb has 2 entrances apparently. Everybody, not one, but they would lead you to believe it's one, but it's actually 2. But yeah, I don't know. There was no. I wanted a big
Yeah.
big fight.
You wanted him to murder an 80-year-old man with his fists.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. I think it is a little unfair, I guess, or whatever you want to say, that Harrison really is just so old he just can't do that hand-to-hand combat anymore. But
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's tough. What are you gonna do?
And so for me, I just thought it was worth it enough to have the giant henchman at 4 out of 5 for me. Car and vehicle chases. Again, I gave this a 4 out of 5 only because I think that this is easily the second most and the second best of the vehicle chases since Last Crusade. Because Last Crusade, you got boats, you got motorcycles, you got sidecars, you got cars, you got a train, you have all this stuff in Last Crusade. I thought it was okay. I gave it a little less splits for me.
I gave it a 3.
Okay.
I'm pretty much. I'd say I'm probably pretty close to you. I didn't think it was as good. It wasn't as good as Crusade or Temple of Doom with the.
That's true. The mine carts. I didn't even.
Yeah. But I thought it was serviceable. Again, just a little too long. And it's also clear Harrison Ford, 80 years old.
Yeah. Now the next one up here is supernatural insanity. So just the level of insane that the supernatural elements go here. I don't know how much more insane you can get than literal time travel, because aliens might exist. But
they do.
I went 5 out of 5 because that we just got straight up time travel 2,000 years plus back in the past.
Would me saying 5, does that mean it's like good, or does that mean it's
I would say it's good.
Well, then I go like 2 because I just didn't buy it. But again,
all right, that's fair.
Again, it's hard.
But this is more so the insanity of it than the believability.
Then insanity is like a 4 probably.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're going into this big battle and we think it's Germany in 1930 or whatever it is, but it's actually whatever BC.
Yeah, and I also think something we didn't really touch on in the main part too is just like the kind of like nerdy like history buff coolness, where it was just like Nazis and Roman centurions and Indiana Jones, like all mixed together, like Nazis and Roman soldiers is just like only in Indiana Jones could that somehow happen. And I think, for me at least, I think they pulled it off well. All right, last one here. Indy doesn't get the treasure. So obviously, we all know every Indiana Jones movie, it's not about the MacGuffin. It's about the lesson learned along the way and everything like that. For this one, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I think, to a certain extent, I think he does get the treasure. He gets to meet Archimedes. He gets to see all of this stuff. But then again, at the same time, it's more so that the experience of going to the past was the relic of this movie, and the dial is just more like the kind of tool to get you there. Unlike the other movies, because basically from the start of the movie, Indy already has half the dial. So I think to a certain extent, I think he does get the treasure, but I think the fact of how big an effort it was to convince him to give up this treasure and what it meant for him, and the fact that at the end of the day he really couldn't, but he had to, I think bumps it a little higher up. So I give that 4 out of 5.
Yeah, you bumped me up to a 3 on that. I do agree. It was more the idea of traveling to that time, meeting Archimedes, living what you've been studying for such a long time, your entire life. And then, not getting the treasure in the sense of the dial, but, kind of reconnecting with those you may have lost previously. So yeah, I go 3 on that.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it was a little bit higher at the 4, but I think it was a really emotional part of the movie to be able to give that up. So adding that all up for me, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and winds up at a, if my math is correct, it's either 35 or 36, but I believe it's 36. 36 out of 50. So I have a feeling that that is higher than yours. Where are you at out of 50 for Dial of Destiny?
Sorry, what was yours?
Mine was 36.
Mine's 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now here's the interesting question. So I gave it 36 out of 50. You gave it 24 out of 50. But where do you think it stacks up to the other films in the franchise? Where would you put this? We don't have to go through and rank them all again, but where would you put this on your list?
My ranking of all the other movies.
Yeah.
So I already did that. It is again. It's subject to change. I rewatch. I could have not completely different opinion maybe, but definitely be persuaded. Right now it's at the end. Again, I don't know what it is. Crystal Skull just. And again, remember I said last week is I think part of it might be the whole kind of I went to go see it with my dad in the theater. It's the first one I saw in the theater. All that stuff that I think definitely helps it.
Yeah.
And upon rewatch, I did say very, very goofy. Very goofy.
Definitely.
So when this comes to Disney Plus at some point, I will be very interested to see where I stand. But as of right now, it's last in my list.
Well, there you go. For me, it is very much not last in my list. For me, it's dead center of the pack. It is number 3. I think.
Other than Temple.
Well, for me, if you remember my ranking, Temple was under Crystal Skull last time I had it. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And again, maybe if next time, in a year and a half from now, when they're all on Disney Plus and I just want to sit down and over a weekend, I'll watch all 5 together, I might have a totally different take on watching them all together like that. But for me, I think it hit on a lot more of the Indiana Jones adventure stuff that I like than Crystal Skull and then Temple of Doom did. I just think that there's more to enjoy for me personally in this, and I really liked the kind of older Indiana Jones. I think that they handled the whole older Indiana Jones a lot more directly in this film than they did in Crystal Skull, because Crystal Skull was like 55-year-old Indiana Jones, so it's like he's not necessarily insanely old in Crystal Skull as he's supposed to be in this one. He's supposed to be like 70. But yeah, I would put it right at number 3 for me. So the last thing I will ask you, has this changed your star rating at all? Are you anywhere up from a 2 out of 5?
I think
you don't have to be. You can.
I don't think so, because I feel like for every positive thing that maybe you brought up, I would be like, well, yeah, but I think for more the negatives more outweigh the positives.
Okay, I think that's totally fair. I think for me, I think honestly the opposite went, and I think you brought up some more negatives that I can't really think of a great argument for. So for me, it is still a 4 out of 5, just because I really did enjoy myself and I really did enjoy a lot of what this movie was doing. But I think that one, keeping it from a 5 is a pretty big one. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that it's really, to me, the thing I just keep coming back to is the runtime. I think it's just so overpacked and it's so overcrowded. And stuff to me that, again, I'm not going to go through and edit the movie, perfectly down or anything like that. I'll leave that to Topher Grace one day. But, I think with a judicious edit, I think you could really make a fantastic 2 hour and 4 minute movie out of this instead of 2:36 or whatever it is. So yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully you are seeing this on Tuesday. That is the plan. I got some editing to do and everything, but thank you guys so much for joining us. Let us know, what did you guys think of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Where does it fall on your overall rankings? Let us know, do you like the whole report card thing that what came over from Star Wars Explained? Also, go check out that video on Star Wars Explained. It's literally called Indiana Jones Report Card. It's a very cool video. But yeah, that will do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. Let us know your thoughts on the 5th Indiana Jones movie down below. And until then, that'll do it for me. I've been one of your hosts, Sean Monk.
Another host, TJ Cornwell. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you thought about the movie in the comments below. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Boom.